minimum effective dose can really change a lot of men's quality of life and can help their mental health and their relationship and save marriages. I'm determined to encourage men to stick to the basics. You'd be surprised when you stay consistent with the basics, how much that affects your testosterone. Exhaust all your resources, go back to basics, but also see if you can develop a baseline first.
What do you think from a testosterone standpoint? Because I've had guests on talking about testosterone optimization, things of that nature. Some going the natural route, some going the HRT route. There is a pretty alarming downward trend in baseline testosterone levels over the past 20, 50 years or so. Abysmally low relative to what it was in the past. And there's probably a multitude of different reasons why that is: the nutrition, the sleep, the distraction, the everything, circadian rhythm, all that jazz. What do you see, like when you're working with the guys, do they tend to gravitate towards that first? And is there a solution to that, playing the long game with improvements in nutrition and fitness and training and sleep? Or is it most like, let's just get on some TRT and call it good?
It's a great question. I see it happen kind of 50-50 if I were to make an arbitrary guess. And I get it. Some guys it's all choice, right? We all have the same 24 hours in a day. However, some people seem to be in situations, whether they got themselves there or not, in worse time constraints. And so I find that a lot of guys who feel like they don't have time, they're just like, let me just go like TRT, HRT, and see what happens. And I used to be vehemently against TRT. I'm like, anybody who goes back to basics and focuses on it can surely get their testosterone up. But then as I worked with guys, I saw, wow, especially minimum effective dose can really change a lot of men's quality of life and can help their mental health and their relationship and save marriages and save parenthoods, And so I've kind of changed my mind over the course of time. I think it's circumstantial. I'm determined to encourage men to use the minimum viable dose or push it off as long as possible. It'll be like, hey, I understand that you're dealing like that your wife left you and you got 3 kids and you just got fired from your job and you're on the job hunt. I understand, but like, let's stick to the basics and do your best, because you'd be surprised when you stay consistent with the basics, how much that affects your testosterone. And the basics to me also includes that, going back to that willpower, filtering out the things that are going to, chip away the reserves and the well of energy and testosterone that you do have. But I was just talking to a good buddy of mine earlier today about how, if I'm doing all that I can as I age, I'll be open to it depending on how I feel about it at that time. I don't think it's a one-stop shop fix though for everything that's going on in the modern world. But I do think for men who have really thrown the kitchen, the kitchen sink at it, I don't know that I would demonize it as much as I used to. I don't know. What's your opinion on it? I'm really curious.
No, I totally agree. I think everything in life is circumstantial. With anything, I don't like people to always look for the get out of jail free card and the quick, easy fix. So if you are doing everything right and you have a recent or a relevant argument to include it, then you're exhausting all the other things and might as well do that as well. But like so many people don't get the basic fundamentals down, and then they're just like that's not going to be optimized if the basic fundamentals aren't down. So like I'm an advocate for, if that's dialed in, then you have a reason to look at and explore other options. Me personally, like I've never had super high testosterone, like genetically, I've never had super high testosterone. So, but I don't feel like it's hindered my drive or willingness to, excel in life and have a zeal and vitality in life. So it's not really hindered me in that regard. But who knows? When I'm 73 years old, maybe it's a different story. But I'm going to fight the good fight as naturally as long as I possibly can.
Yeah, I have the same mentality, and I've gotten a lot of anecdata as I've worked on my own after I left Heart and Soil when it comes to men and testosterone levels. And what I've realized is the total testosterone number, and you probably know this, but it's just worth saying, it doesn't really matter that much. It's how you feel, how you perform, how you recover. Are you motivated? you have energy throughout the day, those kinds of things. Because I see some men with testosterone, total testosterone naturally rest in the 500s, but their free test is typically decent. Their other hormones are decent and they feel good. And that's their baseline. And that's great. So I think shooting for an arbitrary number, especially total testosterone without factoring in other hormone levels, SHBG, and free test especially, it just doesn't make sense to have an arbitrary target like anything, whether that's dating or your lifts in the gym or business. I think it's good to have relevant goals, relevant baselines. And so for anyone considering testosterone, yeah, I'm with you. Exhaust all your resources, go back to basics, but also see if you can develop a baseline first. I think should be your number one priority.
I have noticed that there's some guys, that they'll jump on TRT later in life, 50s, whatever, 50s, 60s, and their wife won't be on the same page, for instance, but then now they're basically having the testosterone and levels of like a raging teenager, because like some of these clinics are like, dime a dozen, just Wild West out there, and they're not really doing it the correct way. So you'll have these guys that have been in an established relationship, marriage, and like life for quite some time, and now all of a sudden they're as horny as a 13-year-old, 16-year-old, and then that can kind of wreak havoc in the home.
Yeah, and something I talk about in the book is I briefly talk about, testosterone or health optimization, because I do think it's crucial. I don't think you're going to be the best version of yourself if you're not putting some effort into that area. But the caveat is you're going to want it more, which requires more discipline and intention and redirection. I make a joke about how, we want to put the erection in redirection. You want to redirect that energy into a pursuit, right? Whether it's like a hobby, a craft, a business, service, whether that's to your community or service to the people like that, or your clients or your family, whatever. I think as men and I know I'm not a woo-woo guy and it gets a little woo-woo, but there really is something to it. You can redirect that energy to other things, like that focus and that intensity. And I think that's something we're meant to do.
Yeah, totally agree. You mentioned earlier too, like the soft porn on social and everything, and it being just prevalent in today's day and age. I would assume from like a deep, meaningful relationship standpoint, there is probably no benefit whatsoever in porn. It's kind of just more of a vice or an addiction that's satisfying this short-term craving and desire, but not really solving the underlying problem or concern.
I would agree with that. And I would say a lot of times if men don't feel like they can succeed in their relationships or with women, or they're in a relationship where they're falling out of love, lack of, sex or intimacy is one of the first things to go. And so I think the easy fix there is porn. And I keep relating these things to health, but I think they're so similar. It's like if you are in a massive calorie restriction for a long time, you're going to crave caloric density foods, and typically those foods aren't as good as what you should be getting. And I think it's very similar. And that doesn't mean I condone it, either one of those things. But I remember prior to getting divorced, there was a period that I was in a sexless marriage, and that was probably the time of my life that I was the most addicted to porn. And I really have seen a lot of guys benefit from. Have you heard the term nofap?
Yeah.
From the idea of abstaining not only from porn but also masturbation, and just redirecting this primal energy into other things or into the right relationship. And for most women that I've talked to and surveyed, they think it's an incredibly attractive thing for a man to have this much discipline. Now, I'm not saying being caught up in the moment and having these connections are great things. It's not evil, but I think when you choose very carefully who you do that with, or when you do it, as opposed to like a computer screen versus like someone that you're pursuing a relationship or in a relationship with, that really changes chemically how your body receives that choice and that action.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, man. I feel like, it's kind of weird. Like sex is one of those topics that's taboo to talk about online, like in podcast form. But it's like sex is supposed to be a very good, pleasant, positive thing, and we've just bastardized it so much over the years with society. But it's like, if you've got a meaningful relationship where two people have literally joined as one, like that is a very good, positive thing. And I feel like with the prevalence of porn in today's day and age and the easy accessibility of it, it's like if you're just looking at a computer screen, wasting away hours a day doing that, like you are not serving anybody. That's kind of like more of the addiction form. Like that's just a vice that you have. It's not benefiting a partner, and it's just your way of coping or escapism or whatever you want to call it. But it's not serving anybody. Like for me, like most guys have struggled with porn at some point, and I've been open about this on the podcast. But it's like when I was starting the business, it became blatantly obvious to me that this was a complete waste of time and was hindering my ability to grow something that I truly felt could serve humanity and create more value than I'm taking. And when I made that realization, like I just quit cold turkey. Like it was easy. It's like, okay, this is not serving the greater purpose. It's out. And I feel like people just need to really figure out and be self-aware as to what their greater purpose is. And then the vices and addictions have no hold on them any longer.
I went through something similar. I think it was an escape. It was a substitute. It was something to satiate a craving. And at the time, I really wasn't assertive enough to ask for what I desired or stand up for my needs. And believe it or not, it was more of a me thing than a her thing. And so I learned that lesson. And then when I moved to Austin post divorce and was working at Heart and Soil, and I was living in the city for the first time, and there's like healthy women everywhere. That was where it clicked with me. And I'm like, it's similar but different. It's like I'm really passionate about my job, and I have all the opportunity in the world to meet someone that I'd like to meet. I need to redirect this to the things that matter instead of throwing it away. And that's what it felt like. It felt like throwing a valuable, non-renewable resource away, like a life force almost. And so when I redirected it and I had that kind of control, not only was I super passionate about my job and could I work long hours and not feel tired and have all of like the vitality and just vigor in the world, but in the dating world, I became so much more confident and I felt like women could feel it. And that's something I hear from a lot of the guys I work with or that are in my men's group is even if it's just, it doesn't have to be anything extreme, but just practicing that control a little bit. There's something different that women notice about you in terms of like your focus. Like you're less scattered on the date or you're interested in them or whatever it is. And so it's like it's a really, I hate to say easy because I don't like things that are easy in the modern world typically, but it's a really, once you start to do it, it's really easy to see the benefits and it rolls over to everything in life.
Thank you for watching this episode of The Savage Clip. If you want to see the full blown deep dive, check out the full episode here and I'll see you there.